Hi guys, it's Sarah. I'm a little bit early with this live this evening, this afternoon, because basically I need to go out a little earlier than I anticipated, because as life seems to be moving around a bit in the UK, the traffic is built up again. So anyway, today I'm just going to talk about brain fog. Now, I'm using this in a more general term, but like so often, as I say, there's many of us walking around saying, I've got brain fog, and I've got anxiety. And whilst some of that may be true for you, as in you're feeling very fuzzy-headed, there's a great difference between actually having quite severe brain fog, a bit like diagnosed anxiety, although brain fog doesn't always come with the medical side of things, but there are medical things you can do for your health to help you. Very often people use these terms quite loosely, quite generally. I've got OCD, I've got anxiety, in a kind of jokey way. So I'm just giving you some general stuff really, and what to look out for, because it's just something that people are saying to me, and I've noticed during lockdown that my brain has been a bit mushy too. Now, I did a video last week about why that is, that during lockdown our brain is processing things quite hard, in terms of processing things such as what are the new rules, cleaning my hands, wearing a mask, keeping a distance. So our brain is being used in a different way, and because sometimes over lockdown our days may have been quite similar and quite stressful in different ways. If you're looking after kids, if you're on repeated calls on Zoom through work, then that sort of trains our brain to work in a certain way, but forget some of the other stuff that isn't so important. So I did do a video last week about what is going on with lockdown brain. But just to touch on brain fog, and of course, if any of this resonates with you and you are concerned, like go and see your doctor. I'm not a medical doctor, I'm just giving you some general guidelines about things that might help you, because it is one of those sort of areas where people will say, oh, I've got anxiety. And it's like, well, you might have moments where you feel anxious or times where you feel a bit overwhelmed, but is that really anxiety? Because, general anxiety disorder and there are other forms of anxiety do have a medical diagnosis. So we have to be careful that we're not talking ourselves into something, that we're not trying to put a label on something which is really about a problem we can fix for ourselves. But anyway, brain fog is a bit like, your head feels a bit fuzzy. It feels like cotton wool, cotton candy if you're overseas, where there was perhaps more, you felt like your brain was firing on a bit more cylinders. Perhaps the lights are on but nobody's home, it feels a bit fuzzy. It might show up as a lack of concentration on tasks, conversations, or even words that you're reading. Focusing on Zooms, you might have difficulty making decisions, small decisions that used to be simple are now a big deal, or you need more coffee, more snacks, or more alcohol at night for temporary relief, from the fog. In severe cases, you could have headaches and problems with your vision, or even nausea. So as you can see, it's like all of these things I talk about, there are sort of scales. There are scales for these different kind of areas. It's not a medical condition. And we do sometimes, I hear people saying, as I mentioned at the beginning, oh, I've got brain fog. It is not a medical condition, but it does have, it's almost like little bit of dysfunction. I'm not saying you're dysfunctional. We don't want to give ourselves label, but there is a bit of a cognitive dysfunction going on, memory problems, lack of mental clarity, poor concentration, inability to focus, all of that stuff I've just talked about, whether it's words, tasks, conversations, and it feels mentally tiring. And depending on how severe it is, it can interfere with work or study, whatever you're doing. It doesn't have to be a permanent fixture, and I'm convinced a lot of it is to do with lockdown, because there's a lot of articles and research coming out about parts of our brains that we might usually use in a world where we're going out traveling more, speaking to people, recalling our days, having different interactions. Our brain is working in a different way, whereas for some of us our days may be quite similar and we're not having those range of experiences to chop up the day and make them feel different. So that's where I think this mental fatigue is coming in. And also there's a concept of languishing, where we're sort of feeling a bit demotivated, maybe not firing as much as we would do. And I know that I've had those kinds of symptoms. And I've definitely had situations where it's like, what was that word? And it was something really, really simple, like train or something. And, you know, we all read about older generations when they're sitting at home or left on their own for long periods of time, they kind of had this forgetfulness. It's been happening for some of us too during lockdown. So as I mentioned, the memory problems, lack of mental clarity, poor concentration, and an inability to focus. Now, and this mental fatigue, because actually this whole situation, and wherever you are, the constant changing of things during pandemic is mentally, it is exhausting. So there is quite a taxing, you know, quite a level of taxation on your brain. So don't worry about it if you feel a bit foggy, but obviously do worry about it. Maybe go and speak to someone if it is like starting over a long period of time to affect your life, your stress levels, your mental health, your physical health. There's tons of resources out there. I would always say to you, go and investigate those resources. There's a really great app called Calm, and there's loads of other apps like Mind Valley, My Therapy, places where you can go to and get help very, very quickly if it is a problem getting to see your doctor. But it does feel like your brain is cotton wool. Your brain is like mush, if you like, that you're not firing on all cylinders. So what causes it? And as I said, it's not recognised as a medical condition, but, you know, if you are, always check in with your doctor if you feel that's the right thing to do. So what causes it? Stress. So when we're stressed, all sorts of things happen to our bodies. You know, we have an increase in blood pressure, our immune system can get weakened. You know, and perhaps if some of you have been ill with COVID, this is something that's going on for you with the longer tail COVID as well. I know certainly through some of the friends I know, they're sort of having some weird stuff going on with longer tail. Yeah, thanks, Carrie Ann. I think it is, you know, and I was saying at the beginning, you know, I'm doing this video a bit earlier than anticipated because, quite frankly, I'm starving and I need to go out earlier than I thought. Anyway, a lot of people are talking about, I feel anxious, I've got social anxiety, I feel this. And I think we have to be really careful not to Dr. Googleize ourselves and medicalise ourselves. Yes, of course, always go to the doctor, speak to a therapist, speak to someone who can help you. But there's a difference between having clinically diagnosed OCD, clinically diagnosed anxiety, and there are many forms of anxiety, there isn't just one. So don't talk yourself into having a problem that you don't have. But as I said, brain fog, it's not a medical condition, but there are some things going on with our body, so feel free to check in with a doc if you need to. But yeah, I think it is. And the video I did last week about what's going on in pandemic time, what's going on with our brains is taxing. And I know that for myself. You know, I know that even though I work from home a lot, staring and sitting at a Zoom camera all day, doing calls, doing meetings with the various things I do is exhausting. My brain's working really hard to focus and look at the light and all of this stuff. Look at the light, that sounded like a film. You know, so it is quite taxing. But anyway, let's get back to brain mush, brain fog, cotton wool head, cotton candy head if you're in the States. So chronic stress. If you're under stress for a long period of time, you need to diagnose and find out the cause of that stress, because your brain will exhaust over time. It causes mental fatigue and it becomes harder to think. It becomes harder to act, to motivate yourself, to think, reason, focus. Okay, so maybe that sounds real to you. And if that's been going on for a few weeks, definitely get some help from that. Here's the one that I really need to focus on myself. You know, I'm not perfect, none of us are perfect, but lack of sleep. I know, for example, that during lockdown there's been a few times where I've stayed up later on the sofa watching a little bit of television, thinking, well, it doesn't matter so much because I'm not going out as much, I'm at home more, I have been at home more, but it still interferes with how my brain functions, and it will do the same for you. When we don't get enough sleep, for example, what can happen is the stuff that's front of mind, in the front of our mind, being processed by the front of our mind, does not get filed in the longer term memory. It doesn't get filed in the right place of our brain. So we do need 8 to 9 hours sleep a night, and sleeping too little can lead to poor concentration and cloudy thoughts. So that's where that can come from as well. there are hormonal changes that can go on, whether that's, you know, and like for women with pregnancy or menopause, there's been quite a lot written about the hormones such as progesterone, estrogen. It might not be so relevant for the men. You know, I know less about that for men perhaps. But there could be things going on medically for men that has a hormone imbalance for them, perhaps something that's, you know, perhaps in ill health, something, you've got a condition that is affecting your sleep, your stress, etc. But hormonal changes for women can have an impact. Forgetfulness, poor concentration, that cloudy thinking. I think if ever I was to make a pandemic cocktail, I might call it cloudy thinking or brain fog. Is that, have we got anyone here who's good at making cocktails or inventing them? Yes, it can, because staring at the Zoom camera all day is really tiring. It affects our motivation. You know, if it's affecting our sleep, all of that is going to have a spiral effect. And maybe with the things that I'm talking about here, maybe you can pinpoint it on one or two things. I pinpoint mine on lack of sleep. So I have to be really mindful. It's just something I have to do to make sure I get enough sleep, that I go to bed on time, because that's something that I can, you know, that's one of the areas I discipline myself on. Diet. Are you eating the right foods? Vitamin B12 is great for healthy brain functions. Vitamin B12 deficiency can bring about brain fog. I'm not trained in vitamins or anything like that, but that is something that I do know about. I take it for myself. Have you investigated perhaps going to a nutritionist, speaking to a nutritionist? I've done that a few times when I first gave up meat, and then when I found out I was having a reaction to certain foods and I found out I was dairy intolerant, cleared it up straight away. Go and get some kind of food advice, diet advice from your personal trainer or a nutritionist. I've done it before and it changed my life. You may have some sensitivities to things like MSG, aspartame, you know, the artificial sweetener, peanuts, dairy. It may not be that it's causing a massive reaction, but it might be having an impact on your brain. And also you may want to go and talk to someone or have a look on an app, see what's happening. You know, I'm sure there's an app you can use if you don't want to go and speak to someone, but all I can say is going to see a nutritionist was a bit of a game changer for me, because I was really tired because I was eating the wrong foods at the wrong time. This was when I was younger, so this was before lockdown. And there's also a lot of evidence around, and I've actually tried this, and again, I would always, if you're unsure, go and speak to a specialist, something like that. Intermittent fasting. Fasting can be really, really good. Now, it's popped up, it's all the rage at the moment in weight loss, nutrition, all of that, but that's not the only reason why it can work for you, and you've got to find the right intermittent fasting program. So, for example, I haven't done it for the last few weeks, but for ages I was following an intermittent fasting plan on an app called Simple, and it would go from 9 o'clock at night until about like 9, 10, 11 in the morning. Now that didn't, maybe 9, 9, 10, depending on how late I ate. So if I stop eating by 9, I can start eating again by 10, 11. Now, what I found was I'm asleep for most of that time anyway. I'm the sort of person that I eat when I'm hungry. I don't know who said we always need to have 3 meals a day. If that works for you, great. If you need to have a diet based on 3 meals a day, great. But I found it sharpened my brain. I wasn't expecting that. It really sharpened my brain. So sometimes if you can extend the last meal of the day and the first meal of the day, maybe sort of 12 hours, less than that, but it really helps to stimulate brain generation. And it sounds weird. All I can say from personal experience, I found it helped, but I would absolutely, with all of these things, go to the guidance of somebody that knows what they're doing. I'm just sharing my own personal experience. So fasting can also help, but have a look as well. Go and speak to somebody about some trigger foods that might be causing you some issues that you're not aware of. Are you taking a medication that's giving you this sort of brain fog this feeling of lack of concentration, etc., then go and speak to your healthcare professional. You know, is there another medication you can take? Do you need to like adjust your medication? So these are all very simple things, but I wanted to tackle them because I'm just getting so many people coming up to me saying, I've got brain fog. And whilst it's not a medical condition, there are some simple things we can do for ourselves. So for example, I know that if I become a much more efficient sleeper, is that, you know, if I catch up on my sleep more efficiently, I know that's going to work for me. I know that this week I've just got myself into a bit of a bad habit the last couple of days, and I just need to regroup, get myself back into shape, and really make sure that I'm getting the, you know, the sleep I need to improve my cognitive and brain activities. 7, 8, 9 hours a night. The quality of your sleep will help your brain to function more effectively during the day. So I know if I do that, everything else is pretty much on track. You know, I do a bit of fasting, I do exercise, I do take vitamins in line for where I am, where my body is at this stage in life. Medical conditions, obviously, you know, there are conditions that cause brain fog, and again, you'd need to be speaking to a specialist about this, but there are things such as, you know, a friend of mine, you know, she had an issue with hypothyroidism, you know, so your thyroid can be something to look at. Could it be diabetes? I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to go through the things that you might want to start looking at, you know, and chances are you might think, do you know what? I should have got that checked out. I've got a physical injury, I've got a backache and a neck ache, and I can't sleep properly, and I've just not got it checked out. You know, it could be anemia, it might be depression, who knows? So get it checked out. There are other autoimmune diseases that you might want to get sort of checked out. And again, there's this really good app called Calm, which is a great meditation app. It's good for meditation and sleep. So I'm just trying to see what else was on the comment here. Yeah, I think job flexibility is really important, especially if you're working at home all the time, because of that being in one place all day. I think you need the flexibility to go out and work out during the day, to take a walk, you know, not being in that foggy area. So I'm covering all the kind of common denominators that will affect, will create this brain fog. So I am going into sort of some of the more medical areas, so you can check them out and go, oh yes, it probably is that, but also it is a cause of lockdown. You know, I think sleep, nutrition, food, health, always that baseline. Drinking of plenty of water. I know if I get dehydrated, I get a bit foggy. Exercise, absolutely critical. Again, you know, get the medical stuff checked out if you think you've got something to get checked out. Go and see a nutritionist. That's never going to be a waste of money, I can guarantee it. But being around positive people as well, as we know, science has shown that being around positive people increases our own happiness, and the same time as being around negative people, although we all have our moments. You know, I've had a bit of a sleepy moment this week, so I've been a bit so I'm like, come on Sarah, get back to bed. But you know, we don't want to be around people that are consistently negative. So yeah, so sometimes it can be something nutritional. It can be something about medication, it can be about sleep, it can be about all the things that I've just mentioned that you might want to get checked out. So there are some very simple answers that you can start for yourself with. Does that make sense? So you can look at the app Karma, speak to your medical professional, speak to a nutritionist, speak to a fitness expert, have a look at your sleep patterns, drink plenty of water, be around positive people, take those breaks during the day, because I think what's changed and why people are using this term more frequently in terms like social anxiety, and it's like, you haven't got social anxiety. You would know if you have social anxiety, and that doesn't mean you're going to have it forever. We are not born with anxiety. We are not born with brain fog. It's just something that maybe happens to us, and we can just start to, you know, rebuild the jigsaw puzzle and rebuild ourselves a bit. So we have to be careful not to label ourselves, to self-diagnose things that we haven't really got. We're just going through a bit of a tough time. I'm not saying don't take it seriously. If anything that I've just said resonates with you, but be careful that you're not giving yourself a label and casting yourself as someone with this. It's just something you might be experiencing for now, and there are ways, as I've explained that you can sort of solve this quite simply, one would hope, unless it's something that you've got an underlying health condition that requires monitoring. But even then, I know people that have had diabetes and early on in their diabetes journey have been able to turn that around through food and diet. Obviously working with a specialist, but with food, diet and exercise, there is evidence you can turn that around. There's also a great books by a guy called Michael Mosley, whether you're diabetic or not, I use them, about how to keep your blood sugar on a stable level so that you're not having these ups and downs of blood sugar during the day. There was foods I used to eat that I thought, oh, that's going to be fantastic to eat a massive jacket potato in the middle of the day. Wrong for me. Sweet potato, a lot more complex to digest, having seeds, nuts, pulses, unless you're allergic, fish, leaves, meat, protein. We all know a lot more now about diet and exercise. So Michael Mosley, recommend his blood sugar diet books, because it doesn't you don't have to be diabetic, but it just keeps you on that stable level. So yeah, make sure you get these 7, 8, 9 hours sleep per night. Manage your stress, know what your limitations are. So if you know that if I'm going to have 10 hours of Zoom calls on one day because I'm still working at home all the time, have a look at that, speak to your manager. This is about self-leadership as well, in terms of, I'm not going to have my camera on for those calls, because it's because, as I mentioned, our brains focus quite intensely with the camera on. Don't have the camera on, kick back, relax. Do you have to go to all of those meetings? Do you have to say yes? A lot of people are saying yes to everything because they feel guilty about working from home, or feel like they should be on call 24/7. That is not the case. I think the idea of, I did a video on Instagram this morning, so it's on at my Instagram page, Sarah J Coaching, go and check it out, because me and a lady that I know who also is in HR, well, she's in HR consultancy, we're talking about balance, work-life balance, and shouldn't it just be life balance or balance? So check in on your own balance. Are you feeling like I have to be online visible all the time because my manager is micromanaging me, needs to know where I am all the time? No, we're all adults here. We all need a break during the day. We all might need to get some fresh air. I've had days where I've just sat in the office all day and worked, and I know I don't feel as good as if I don't, I feel better rather if I take a break through that day. So be careful that you're not pushing yourself too hard. You're not trying to prove yourself too hard. I know from my career that I started getting, oh, thank you, Fit Rebel. I know that from my own career, when I started to get control of my balance, I had more career success. I thought working hard, being always on my, I had a BlackBerry, years and years and years ago, a BlackBerry mobile device. I was on it all the time, answering emails at odd times, and I wondered why I was tired and run down and sort of not able to concentrate. I was doing that, and people just expected me to be there all the time, but I don't think they valued me. People value you more when you can be professional, you can show up, you can deliver, you can be proactive, you can be a great team member, you're positive, you're offering solutions, but you are not always available, that you do have boundaries, that you do have that time off, because we can't just keep going and going and going. And it's the same. I was speaking to a guy the other week, he's quite a senior manager, and he was saying, oh, my brain feels so foggy, I'm really tired, I can't concentrate. And I said, well, tell me about your day. Well, he said, Sarah, I go to work in my office, my garden office, not my office garden, my garden office. I go there for 9 o'clock in the morning. Okay, what do you wear? Well, I wear a shirt on top, but my pyjama bottom's on the bottom. Now, for me, I know that wouldn't work, because I'd still feel like I'm in my pyjama bottoms. Now, yeah, thank you. It is, absolutely. Because I think, Fit Rebel, when people know your boundaries, they know how to sort of deal with you, and they know that they can't just keep throwing things at you willy-nilly. When that person dumps a load of work at you, which is really their work. Assertiveness is a massive part of the career and leadership coaching that I do, gone are the days where, you know, I think the leader employee role needs to be a lot more collaborative. And even on a personal level, I mean, if you have ever had a relationship with someone that hasn't got any boundaries, it's a bit of a nightmare, because as soon as you start putting your boundaries in, they're like, whoa, and can't deal with it. And that's not about being strict or like Cruella de Vil or really rigid. It's just about saying, hey, do you know what, that's really not cool when you do that, and people feel really comfortable about doing it. You might say it in a different way in a business setting, but there might be things to address. But I think what happens if you don't set those boundaries, you become mentally and emotionally exhausted. So a little bit of relationship advice there as well for free. Anyway, so back to the guy in his pyjamas. Now, good luck to him. If he feels really on point in his pyjamas, great. Yeah, I think it starts with us. Yeah, I'll come back to that in a minute. So the pyjamas. So he was going to work, doing his job, finishing up sort of 5, half 5, came back in the house. I said, what happens then? Well, have something to eat. What happens then? And this was a Friday night. What happens then? Well, the kids are on the computer, wife's doing something else. So what do? I go back to work. And it's like, well, no wonder you're exhausted, and no wonder you're creating this problem. But yeah, Fit Rebel, it's really interesting you say that, because I did a video this morning on Instagram, and there's a lot of connotations around the word selfish, about being selfish can sometimes have a negative, negative connotation. I think it's not about being selfish as in being a mean, nasty person, but it is, like, as you say, self-love, self-acceptance, self-management. You know, you can go through self-management, self-mastery to self-leadership, you know, and if we don't value ourselves, then how the hell is anybody else going to value us? And that comes out in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways. We feel like we have to prove ourselves all the time. We try really hard in romantic relationships, in business relationships, to prove ourselves or do stuff for other people. We say yes to things that we should be saying no to. Everything for me is about, I think you've got to have that baseline of self-esteem. Without self-esteem, I think life is very difficult, because you can be very insecure, quite needy. You haven't got those boundaries. And I've seen a classic example this year of someone without boundaries, and the life was just chaos. And I was like, well, why don't you just say no to this friend? Why are you running around after them? And they were like, oh, I never thought of that. So it is about actually self-love in terms of self-care. There's a really, really great author called Cheryl Richardson. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of Louise Hay. I think she trained with Louise Hay. So it is on the self-development side of things, somewhat spiritual, but not over the top spiritual. She's got a great book called I think it's called Self-Care for Self-Love. I don't know if you've heard of her, Fit Rebel, but she's great. Her thing is really self-care. She's even got a set of cards. I've got them downstairs, and they're called self-care cards. And I like little things like that because I'm a visual person. Maybe this will help with your brain fog. Maybe there are some cards you can buy. You can buy them from Hay House Media, Louise Hay or Cheryl Richardson. And Cheryl Richardson's self-care cards have got things like support, sleep, rest, boundaries, and they've got a nice sort of one sentence piece of advice or guidance for it. So I'd have a look at some of those. They're just nice reminders to have. But you're right, it is about self-love, because if you love and appreciate yourself, and again, I'm speaking to somebody this week, a lady who wants to do some coaching, and you know, the pandemic's given her a chance to sit down and stop because she couldn't work about, I'm not sure what I want anymore. What am I about? I've been doing all this stuff for other people. And she's been going like a machine. The stuff that she's dealt with is unbelievable. I'm like, my God, you're like Robocop. You know, is it any wonder that you feel exhausted now? So again, brain fog. Maybe you are running around after other people too much. Have you had a series of events? Sometimes when people pick up the phone and ask for coaching, I'm like, well, tell me what happened. Tell me what's happened. Give me a timeline. And if I feel it's not just about career but other things, it's like, well, well, I split up with my boyfriend, then this is what happened with my dad, then this, then this, then this. And I think very often we can get on that fight or flight treadmill. And sometimes if you're very good at dealing with challenges and you like to step up to it, you can get into that superhero complex. So maybe that can be something around brain fog as well, in terms of how the hell can you focus on what you want, what you love, what you deserve, if you're running around looking after other people. Sometimes that can be a bit of a distraction from our own feelings of inadequacy, not knowing what we want. That can be a sign of that. So running around after other people can be something that causes brain fog. So again, I've talked about food, nutrition, exercise, drinking water, but being around nature, and looking at the sky. One of the best ways to make yourself feel better and fresh is just to look up at the sky. It's actually called skyology, believe it or not. And take those breaks. Just because people can't see you working doesn't mean you're not working. Remember the days in the office? I had days when I was working full-time in an office and doing all this other stuff, where I'd had days where I wasn't that productive and days when I was. It's just life. Days that were busier than others. Why wouldn't that be the same at home? Because that, don't sort of go over the top because you're working at home. You're working at home, and why not? Why don't you deserve to have those hours back that you would be commuting? You deserve that balance. It doesn't mean you have to start working. If you want to, great, and if you're somebody that really wants to progress, work hard, go up through the ranks, go for it. And I was like that when I was younger. I was like, I'm going to get to that level, then kick back a bit. And I was creating a lot of my own issues, but set yourself some boundaries, and because otherwise what happens is, and I think this is maybe the bit of the difference around brain fog, we've talked about stuff that happens generally, but we're not switching off. And if you are, in the UK it's different, we are opening up a little bit now. If you are going straight from work Zoom calls to personal Zoom calls, you're not giving yourself a break. It's really draining. This kind of digital fatigue is a real thing. I've had people asking me to come and do talks and speak, and they're like, well, we're going to do this 2-day event and we'd like you to be there for the 2 days. And I'm like, I'm sorry, no. I'm happy to come just before I do my session. But for me, I know if I'm sitting on a computer for 2 days looking at something, it's just too much. We need to think about things differently. It's supposed to be entertaining, not draining. So, if you're doing events and congresses, and I think some companies haven't got their heads around that yet, and I've been working a lot with a company on their internal training program, and it's like, we need to think about this like television programming, actually, not just sitting on a Zoom call for 2 days flat or whatever it is. So covered a lot of ground there. Brain fog, yes, it's a thing. Yes, it feels like cotton wool in your brain. Yes, it's about lack of concentration, motivation. I mean, maybe there is an area of your life that is giving you a bit of cause for concern. It could be something with your family, your children, if you're not happy in your job, if your relationship's not going so well. Those can all be like massive causes of stress, or if you are, maybe it's a long COVID symptom, in which case, speak to your doctor or whoever it is, because the symptoms seem to be very varied. Oh, thanks, Fit Rebel. Are you on Instagram? Yeah, anyway, there could be a very specific area of your life. So look at the different areas of your life: work, finances, house, home, children, family, relationship, and have a look at which one is kind of giving you kind of a bit of stress at the moment. Get the sleep, get the nutrition you need, supplements, alcohol. Don't rely on alcohol too much. Okay, connect with, I don't know if we're connected on Instagram, but feel free to connect, because I did a video this morning on work-life balance, or rather life balance, or rather just balance. Life's all a balancing act, isn't it? Everything's a balancing act. Feed your brain. We talked about nutrition, visiting a nutritionist, get those workouts, get that fresh air, get that sleep, be around positive people. Make sure you're managing your boundaries at work, that you're not sitting in front of the computer all day, every day, getting really, really tired. But yeah, brain fog is not a medical condition, but it might feel like it. And I think what we've got to remember now is that the reason this word's becoming so popular, excuse me, is because of the lockdown. It's caused people to, you know, maybe just use one part of their brain, not the other parts of their brain. So if you feel that's an area, then try and challenge yourself to do something different, like Sudoku, a crossword, a jigsaw puzzle. Get those other bits of your brain working. Me and my friend tomorrow, I'm going horse riding for about the first time in 6 years. When I say horse riding, it's probably a bit of a slow trot, because I said I just need to go and do something different. We're lucky in the UK that things are opening up. I know for me, what gets my brain working is driving. For some reason, when I'm driving, I get loads of really good ideas, and my brain starts firing. Rather than being at home all day, I can find that a bit draining if I'm not careful. So I do have to go out, speak to people, etc., because I'm quite extrovert. So one of the things I want to do is go and hire like an old Corvette, an old car, something like that, and just like throw it around the racing track for a bit. So yeah. So anyway, I sort of did a bit of a meander there about brain fog. Talked about some really simple things you can do. I would always say sleep, nutrition, food. If you think it is something medical, then please do speak to a nutritionist, speak to your doctor. There could be something going on with your hormones. But let's remember that despite all of that and the general stresses we have in life, we've got this layer of lockdowns in various guises, whether it's like you can do this, you can't do this, it's changing a lot. We're just having to adapt all the time. We're adapting to change all the time, and that in itself is tiring. So if you feel like you're a bit foggy, if you feel like you can't remember things, it's because your brain's just processing a lot of very different things than it used to. You know, we're not maybe having those conversations during the day where we'd have to recall things and tell people about it because we're working from home. We're doing a lot of staring at screens, which can be draining. So think about maybe some stuff you can do. I mean, take up juggling, whatever it is, you know, see if there's something you can do to sort of get out your comfort zone. I find for me, if I set myself a challenge, do something different, that really helps me, because otherwise it's very easy to get stuck in this rut, like the boss in the pyjamas I was talking about. So yeah, give those things a go. Try something different. If you do try something different, let me know what it is and how it worked for you. Something that's going to make your brain fire in a different way. Let's get that brain is like, our brain is like plasticine. We can shape it, we can remold it, we can refire neural networks and start to sort of reactivate our brain a bit. So thanks for watching, guys. I did this one a bit earlier because I'm starving. I need to eat something. But it's been great having you listening. Thanks for your comments, Fit Rebel. Totally agree with what you said about boundaries and self-love. Drop your Instagram feed on here and we'll connect with you on there. And have a great weekend, everyone. And get those brains firing and get some sleep. Alrighty, bye.